Well, welcome to this very special show because I have a wonderful guest today who has been on the show before, who we all really enjoy having on. I had such a great response whenever Susan's on the show. It's the wonderful Susan, now Robinson Smalley.
Hi, Risaria. It's good to be here again, especially at this time of the year when everybody's very high in spirits and there's loads of festivities around. No matter what religious beliefs, everybody has a general feel-good factor at this time, don't they?
Yes, and I think the great thing is that I'm getting why people say, every day is Christmas. It's because it's having that spirit of generosity and connection and appreciation. It feels so good.
It does, yeah. You have to have that from within, of course. It's no good looking for it without. Such a lot of people culminate at this time of the year searching for gifts to give to people to symbolise their love and their friendship and their kindness, and they're really seeking acknowledgement and acceptance from some people. How many times do people get so stressed over choosing a present, a gift, when really if you were to be in someone's company, just to afford them the time to listen, perhaps just to acknowledge, and we've been speaking this morning about the recording, whether or not we should look at each other or look at the PC for recording purposes. And of course, when we communicate, it is quite rude to look away when we are acknowledging somebody's presence, and just to engage in that moment. That moment of time is that connection of two souls, of two spirit. And I think that just ignites a warmth within, that spark of acknowledgement, that spark of connection does so much for our body, for our mind, for our emotions. Yes, it's nice to get a gift, but you know yourself, how many times do you get so excited about opening up this beautifully presented gift? You untie the ribbons, you take away the beautiful paper that it's wrapped in, and you look inside and you're kind of a little bit, deflated, shall we say. Your expectations haven't reached their full potential.
Well, for me, a few years ago, I have stopped stressing a long time ago about giving gifts. And I also, I don't mind if I receive them or not, but usually it's when I connect with people, and I'm so thrilled. My daughter has flown over from the States and she's in London at the moment. So just to have that phone call with her in the same time zone was wonderful. And we're going to meet up in Christmas week, so we'll have a Christmas day when she's here.
Yeah,
it's creating a Christmas around your family or friends or whatever suits you. And I've been doing this, I think, as most people have already. I mean, on Sunday we had the Spice Christmas party, and it's great. It was we had a Christmas curry, naturally being spicy, and it was very spicy and very delicious. But at this wonderful restaurant, Angiti's in Low Fell.
Oh, is that on the main front street?
Yes, on Kells Lane.
Oh, Kells Lane, I know it well. They've got a fabulous fish and chip shop there as well.
Yes, but I really recommend it because the staff were so wonderful, and really friendly. It was a real pleasure. It felt like we were part of a big party.
Yeah. The Indian restaurant is actually opposite that fish and chip shop, because I've noticed it.
That's useful to know.
Now that you've recommended that, I think we'll be paying it a visit, because we go out quite regularly and make a point of going out regularly with a group of friends. So we're always looking for different places to go to.
Yeah, and they cater for, because I said my son is now vegan, and they said yes, we just give us a call, no worries at all.
Yeah.
And the beauty was I was near my son, so I stayed with him that night. So I was able to connect with him in his very busy weekend.
Yeah.
So it's just those moments, and he made me breakfast.
Oh, wow.
It's just so lovely, and it's little touches, like he made the porridge with cranberries and golden syrup and nuts, and it was just delicious.
I know my son now, as you know, he's been working and living in the Far East
Yes.
for 6 years, and he moved from China down to Hong Kong, and I've been across there. I was lucky enough to visit several times, and I loved it. But of course, at the Christmas time, when you do a Skype call with your loved ones overseas, and it's a
Yes.
very limited Skype call because of the distance and demand,
Yeah.
somewhere else, and it's not the same because you kind of get that energy connection. You kind of have the hug that you so want from your son, and you kind of like a little bit guarded, a little shielded. You're very professional and don't want to connect too much emotionally because it's only short-lived, isn't it? That's
Oh, I think you'll do a very different Skype call to me because, well, my daughter was, because she's been in the States for 6 years, and last year she was in Australia with her boyfriend. So she was on the beach for Christmas.
Oh, lovely.
I'm just going, I'm just hugging you. I'm hugging you right now. It may be a virtual hug, but this is a hug because I get so excited.
My son's nearly 31, so he's quite mature, and I don't think he would appreciate that.
Yeah.
But when you're
it may be a girly thing.
Yes, he visited by surprise. It was a surprise visit a couple of weeks ago with his wife and my granddaughter Isabel. And when he came in, it was lovely. He just embraced me and we hugged. Obviously, I've seen him since his return to the UK last February, but he hugged me, and it's that hug, that embrace that stays. And it stays even after the embrace has been released.
Yeah, that physical contact is so...
It is, yeah. And the first thing that it was sprung in front of me was a lovely bag, and it contained handmade dark chocolate and peppermint cream chocolate as a gift. And my granddaughter...
He knows you well.
So they were quite delicious.
That's great.
But it's those exchanges, isn't it? The small things that matter at Christmas time. And everybody's trying to dress a little bit more sparkly. I was out at a Christmas do last night. I was like a Christmas tree, in Newcastle with all of the gold sparkles going on. But it was lovely just to make that extra special effort to spruce up oneself as we spruce up our homes, and all of the lights that adorn the outside of the homes just brighten everybody's spirit up. But the spirit that I connect with, of course, is the spirit within the person.
Yes.
And to see so many people, and I've got to say, Risaria, that this Christmas, this December time, I thought I was going to give myself 3 weeks holiday off. Oh, the demand is such this year, which is good for me in my business.
Yes.
But it isn't in a reflection to society and the way that society is actually feeling that pinch and that strain upon them, that stress. Because so many people lately have been coming to me quite bewildered about where they're going, which direction. They're no longer satisfied. Perhaps jobs come to a close at this close of a year. It isn't uncommon for people to have redundancies right at the very brink of Christmas time. So sometimes Christmas is, of course, tinged with sadness, or perhaps they've lost a loved one and they're feeling that void of emptiness. And to soothe that, my December is actually the busiest that it has been for 10 years.
Yes.
It is, and so that is a sad reflection on the way everybody's feeling. But to connect with a soul that comes to me and just ignite that hope within them, to inject that sparkle within them, you can see the change. And just recently, this past week, I've had several ladies come to me, and a gentleman, who were quite downhearted. They were quite sad, and they looked as if there was a closed door ahead of them. And we just worked a little tweak here and there in their lifestyle. And suddenly you could see the brightness lift on their face as they left the house. And I love that.
It's so wonderful being an uplifter. And I think you are a great uplifter. And that's why I wanted to do this show, because I wanted the show to be about appreciation and sharing our passion, and generally raising the vibration, uplifting.
There are too many people in this area who have gifts and talents. Perhaps they are working in business, or perhaps they have a skill in an athletic sense. They can help somebody with somebody's demeanour of health and well-being, their mental health. And they have this ability, this beautiful gift and they don't want to share it with anybody, and they're quite selfish, and really they're harming themselves by not sharing. So I believe that to open up and to have that passion all of the time, and trust me, I've known my emotional traumas throughout my lifetime, but to be equipped with the skill to overcome those traumas and to make the best out of the situation, to bring that around and to share it with somebody else and to see and feel that you've made a difference to somebody is the greatest gift of all. And that's why we are all here, no matter what the skin colour, no matter what the religious belief, we are here to help one another.
And I think, and first of all, we need to start with ourselves.
Yes, you've got to feel that way about yourself first.
Yes. And I think that's why it's sort of living that. And I love that this year you have been a living vision of happiness in that you have married Peter Robinson, who to me seems to be the love of your life.
The absolute soulmates. The angels brought us together. We have a great connection, obviously, that helps, doesn't it, in a marriage? We have a great blend of energy. We have a very open relationship in that we communicate daily, continuously with each other. There is never a dull moment, because if Peter goes off and does his thing, like today, he's actually doing some voluntary work at our wedding venue in Crew Call Gardens in Durham City, which is fabulous. And he volunteers there twice a week. And once he goes off, he meets an array of people from all around the region, around the country, overseas visitors coming to Durham City for the first time, perhaps on holiday. He's equipped with his knowledge to give a little bit of insight as to where to go tourist-wise, where to eat, where to enjoy, where are the best spots for photographs, etc. And so when he comes home, he's got a plethora of information to share with me, and the same with myself. In the work that I do and the times that I have and the travels, as you know, I like to keep a balance, and I think that's very important. But becoming Susan Robinson hasn't been difficult. It's been something that we eased together into, but I still, of course, use Susan Smalley as my business name and recognised as such for such a long time. So Susan Robinson, at this time, I know that we have Christmas cards that we're sending out to friends, and they have robins on the front.
Oh, perfect.
Absolutely perfect. So, you know, the Christmas cards are going out with greetings from the Robinsons this Christmas. For the first time, I'm actually giving acknowledgement to my name, because when we change our identity, whether it be hair colour, and I used to have black hair, dark hair, red hair, the whole thing. But now, of course, I absolutely wanted to have something lighter as we age, we become, our skin change, complexion, we are changing all of the time. And what I did 10, 20 years ago, I no longer do, I have no interest in. But becoming in a unit, becoming in that harmony together within a marriage of souls for the rest of our lives, it's a commitment, it's a contract, it's a joy, it's an absolute joy. And I think Peter would agree with me here. I know he's absent today, but he would agree that every day is different. And he'll shake his head, and after we've had like a very exciting day, we'll come home and he'll say, "No 2 days the same with Susan Smalley."
And I think that's true when you live in the moment. You're not harking back at the past. You're just flowing with life, and you're in the flow of life. That's when that for me is when I'm at my happiest. It's when you're in that flow, and you never know what's going to happen next. It may happen the way you've seen it, but often I find there's something much better comes up.
If you allow yourself to be in that moment, then you're open to any eventuality. You're open and ready to act. You're ready to step into that new moment. If you have so many restrictions or expectations around yourself, then that expectation can be dashed, because you can then be so disappointed because of your expectation, the way things could pan out. I think that if you remain flexible of your attitude in your everyday life, flexibility is the key. And I know I did a beautiful spiritual service at the Spiritual Centre up in Wickham a couple of weeks ago, and I spoke about how we give boxes, gifts, presents to people at the Christmas time. But what about giving ourselves a box, a gift, an invisible box? What if we gave ourselves and prepared now, today, this very day, our happy box? So in those times when we feel dismayed or downhearted, perhaps grief-stricken, perhaps a little lost and bewildered, we can open our imaginary happy box, and inside, even physical box, we could put this together ourselves today. But if we had a box with all of those things that made us feel good inside, what would you put in? What would you savor? What would you treasure? What would be the things that you would want to put into that gift box to yourself on the darker days when you're feeling lonely and lost and sad? What would brighten your spirits? And of course, for me, it would have to be a beautiful long hot bath with bubbles. And, I know I had a little joy I shared with my congregation, the fact that one of those would be perhaps a ticket on the Orient Express.
Yes.
It would be just to stay in bed all day and to have a bath and to read a book from start to finish and afford ourselves that luxury.
Or a walk along the coast. I know you and I have shared some wonderful walks along the coast.
Yes, that we are so lucky in the northeast, are we not, to have the beautiful Durham coastline and the Northumberland coastline.
Yes.
And then if you were to venture a couple of hours down the coast, the North Yorkshire coastline, there's no excuse. There's no excuse to get to remove ourselves from where we are and to take a half an hour or a 15-minute jaunt to that coast, because as you know, the elements at the coastline invigorate our souls. There is something about the energy of healing at the coastal scenery, and also the elements of the sea air, that beautiful mindful travel that we have at the coast, because how many people stand at the coast and look out to the pier and imagine the boats of years gone by and all of the travellers who have come to the coastline or departed from the coastline, all of the fishermen who've gone out to bring in the produce for everyone, all of the activity for pleasure. In memories that occurred, I learned to swim on Seaburn Beach in a little boat. I did, yes.
Because I've been swimming there this summer, although I must admit I was planning to do it throughout the winter, but I haven't been in.
Well, on Boxing Day, you may actually see me go along to the bathing on Boxing Day at the coast, because I've actually seen something on social media.
Oh, can you share that with me? Because I would like to do that.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. We'll get in touch and I'll come along, and that'll be great. And we'll have a hot chocolate.
Hot chocolate.
To warm us up. But even sort of warming the cockles of the heart, being at the coast, so to speak. And the whole memory of just being a child, that childlike quality, we mustn't forget that whatever the age, we are still children.
Yes, and I think that you know, being at the coast, even if you don't go in the water, the air just invigorates you, and it does something physically and mentally. Yeah.
Have you seen the number of dogs that are on the beach?
Yes.
When people are out walking, especially Tynemouth, I've noticed, in Seaham Beach, you go along and there's
after the September restriction.
there's a million species of dog at the coast, and look at what happens when they let off that lead. Look at how they're pounding along those pebbles. It doesn't matter what's underfoot. If it's slippy, they're having so much joy, so much fun. And what do? Dive straight into the water. There's no fear. There's such an excitement. And you know yourself, perhaps when you were going on a visit as a child to the coast, you were squealing in the back seat. Where are we? Who can see the sea? I can see.
And then you go, I can see the sea. And there's such excitement.
I could not live in the middle of the country. I could not live where there was no water. I've got to have water around me. And I feel that when we're speaking about people feeling good, sometimes they go for a jacuzzi, they hire a hot tub, they go in the bath and have a long soak. We always return to source. We always return to water, which is what our body is completely made up of.
Yeah.
And the whole of the planet is over 80% water. So
It's a very basic instinct.
It is, yes. We are water babies and we need to be there around water. If
Mm.
you think of our emotions when we're sad and when we are joyful, we release water. We release water
Yes.
every day, of course, through our bodily functions, but we release water to express our emotions.
And
Um,
it's also important to keep it flowing. Our emotions, keep our emotions in flow, not be stuck in any one. Oh, I've just had a light bulb moment, Susan.
uh-huh.
Because, we were talking about this the other day. I was on a photo shoot with my publisher in over at Preston University, at Lancaster University, and we were saying that the photographer mentioned that he'd had spells of depression, and we were talking about how to move through this, and I said, well, to me, I see it as valleys and mountains, and you don't regard being down in a valley as good or bad, or up in the mountain as good or bad. It's just where you are at that time. And it's the same with emotions. All emotions have their function. And I think that sometimes we forget that when we are down in those dark places, they actually can be very healing. And if we learn to appreciate being in that place and acknowledging it, and then it's not healthy to stay there, but then allowing the emotions to rise up. And then, you maybe enjoy bliss and inspiration, but moving through anger and jealousy, these are emotions that are useful to give us a movement in life.
Anger teaches so much because it's a
Yes.
stirring of fire, it's a stirring of emotion from within. And if people were to utilize their anger in a very productive way, in a very creative way, because I believe that each one of us have creativity, whether it be the written word, the spoken word, the visual expression of colour in art, because life is art, everything around us in the landscape is art. We ourselves move in an artistic form because I know that I'm adorned in sort of like peaches and khaki greens today and
Yeah.
cream. So that reflects the mood inside with a little bit of sparkle. So again, colour expresses, it communicates the way we feel about ourselves inside. And I
Yes.
know I've got a very busy day today, a very healing day today and into the evening as well with those who come to me. So I want to keep the energy very calm. I don't want to be very vivid and bright and
Mm.
gregarious. So I know that I have toned down the hues of my wardrobe, shall we say, today,
Yes.
because everybody that visits me today is going to have that reflection back to them. So colour stimulates an emotion of calmness within people if they see that. Anger itself can be used, just think of the fire in your belly if you have before a run. People pay mentors, they spend thousands of pounds trying to get that energy within the pit of their stomach, that motivation, that drive, that inspiration, that fire of enthusiasm, and yet it's there all of the time. And
Mm.
it can be something like a frustration that the car won't start. Do something else in that time. Remove yourself from the problem. Remove yourself from the problem immediately. Go and do something else that is a little task and then go back
Yes.
to it. And 90% of the time the car will start. I'm no motor mechanic, by the way, in technical terms, but I know that just the energy of something can restart, regain its strength if you don't generate a frustration with it.
Yeah. It reminds me, I was traveling back from Preston on Saturday, and there was half an hour between buses. And I could have just sat at the bus station. And then I thought, well, actually, I've never been to Lancaster before. I'd like to get some cash and something to eat. And I found the most beautiful street with this gorgeous cafe.
Oh, lovely.
And it was just because I decided I was going to savor and appreciate and enjoy my experience in that town that I'd never been to. And it was like getting this gift. And it's when we change our thought process and how we're feeling, we'll attract to us something on the
Absolutely.
same level. Yeah.
When you are in that flow, it's like Peter, when we were first together, he had to have A to B, everything planned. He had to know where we were going on a journey, on a day out, what time we were due back, what equipment we needed to take. And I would say, oh, Peter, get in the car and
Yes.
drive. And he would say, but where we're going, just get on the road. Now, I would get to the roundabout at Durham and say, going from my inner compass, shall we say, my gut instinct, we're going south. And he would say, well, where we're going? And we'll get on the A1 and he'll drive. And I'll say, oh, keep going, a little bit further. No destination in mind. And we ended up in Knaresborough. And Knaresborough has the most amazing healing energy. Anybody who hasn't been to Knaresborough, get yourself there. There are a few coffee shops. It's a beautiful, quaint little place. And of course, you're en route to either York or Harrogate in either direction. Ripley Castle is a beautiful little place to go to as well, just down the road from there. But Knaresborough has a certain energy, and I know it's not coastal, but it does have the river Nid running through it. And it has the most amazing view from the top of the ruined castle in Knaresborough, looking down on the riverbanks and the beautiful bridge. And of course, there are quaint little coffee shops, gift shops, and also charity shops there. But you know, we ended up there, and he said, oh, I've never been here before. Yeah, I would never have thought to come here. And I said, because you've got to go with your instinct. You've got to go where the mood takes you. And so Peter now has abandoned all of his pre-planning for everything, and he just goes with the flow.
It's so great.
It's so stress-free. It doesn't mean to say you're complacent and that you can't make plans.
No.
We do have to have some structure. But to say, well, if this is meant to be, it will happen. If it doesn't happen, then must be a reason for it. And just not to sort of persecute or
don't beat yourself up.
Yeah.
It's so funny because
what do you do, Risaria, when you've got anger or frustration within the pit of your stomach?
It's not often that I have anger, and I'd know the most spectacular time I was angry. I was in a meeting, and I'd been turned down for the finance I was requesting, and I felt it was because the man was afraid. He in fact, shortly afterwards, he left that job. It wasn't his fault, but he was very cautious. And I could feel the anger in me. And it just I was just standing still, and it just went right through me, just like a great fire through me. And I was just very calm, and I was observing it. And he turned us down, and then he said, oh, I'll get you this, I'll get you that. And he was rushing around trying to get me things. I think he realized something was going on, and I wasn't blaming him. But sometimes, and I've read since that Gurdjieff used to recommend this as a practice as well, it's just to observe it in you, not to block it, not to put it out onto somebody, but just to be with it. And it was really a wonderful experience. And I'd lived in a community where a lot of people had anger issues, and it was seeing what was going on with them. And this was prior to this experience, and I often found that when something annoyed me, like I was the laundry boss, and I'd asked one man not to put things on the ironing board. He'd put a bucket or he'd put things onto the ironing board, and I'd say, please don't put them on. And I realized, I felt he was doing it deliberately, like he'd put a plate of toast on and things like this. And I could feel the anger, and I just thought, okay, it's not hurting the ironing board, just let it go. And I never actually had a confrontation. So by the time I came to this meeting, it was like I'd practiced letting the anger go.
Yes. Yeah.
It was like being given a gift of situations where anger arose, but there was no one to vent it on. And I knew I didn't need to. Yeah.
I know when I've had a few people come to see me where they've been very stressed out about work situations, where they've been bullied within the workplace.
Yeah.
humiliated, intimidated by a superior. And I've always given them a little tip, and I know that it will work for those listening and watching.
Yes.
But if you are in a confrontation with anybody and you can feel that they're very angry and they're trying to push your buttons, and you're trying to remain very calm and try to let it just wash over, blow over. If you are having difficulty with any frustration or urge to retaliate verbally, hopefully not physically, but if you want to quell that feeling of frustration and anger, the person in front of you, if you focus here, just above the third eye,
Yes.
just to the brow of the person, and you imagine that there is a center there, a hole going straight through their head, but you take your eyes up, and this is how we started this conversation about eye contact.
Yes.
But if you take your eyes up into this brow area and you focus through as if you could see all the way through to the back of their head, one, it makes the person, what are they looking at? Sort of, it throws them off track. And two, it removes yourself so that you extend your mind travel and your vision and sense beyond the person in front of you, beyond the situation that is you are embarked upon. And it helps to diffuse any anger within the opponent.
Yeah.
It's good for business also.
It's interesting that I'm just thinking there's a couple of words that have sprung out when you said if you have a situation with a superior, because I think often this emotion can arise if you aren't in your worth, recognizing your own worth. Mm-hmm. And if you are feeling that someone is superior to you, it's because you are attracting that because you aren't feeling worthy. Mm-hmm. And
in a situation of employment where perhaps an employer, a manager, a director would come, and of course I've worked in the corporate world all of my life in a PA role, and I know that I can recognise the traits of certain directors and managers, being very complacent, or being very sort of argumentative and throwing their weight around and looking down their nose at other people. That's, in that sense, it's unfair. But at the same time, to recognise that there is a voice within yourself, and that voice is your inner voice, which is telling you that you've done nothing wrong, just to be right and just to acknowledge what's being said. Oh, I'm sorry you feel that way, but yes. And I have an example of this. When I was working in a company, I was one of 7 PAs. And over the years, those PAs were made redundant. And at the end of the term of my employment there, I was the one remaining PA. So, of course, all of the other directors, the international sales director, marketing director, the senior buyer, and the operations director had lost their PAs. And my director, who was the international sales director, he had myself. So, of course, what happened, because I was so efficient, all of the other directors used to come to my door to land the work on my desk, and I used to say, oh, yeah, no problem, yeah. And I would accept it because I thrived on being busy, and I loved that stress that was there to a deadline. And then one day I thought, this isn't fair, this is not fair, yes. But I dare not voice this unfairness. So I thought about it, and I used this application of my energy. And the senior buyer came through my office door, and he said, oh, I need this for a meeting this afternoon. Would you mind typing it up? And I said, do you know something? I would love to help you out. I would love to be able to do that for you. But I think I've got sufficient workload here. Thank you. And he didn't know what to say to that.
Yes.
Because I didn't say no.
No. That's brilliant, yeah.
And it worked. A little tip for you all out there.
That's a really great tip, Susan. It reminds me of my shiatsu teacher was talking to us because someone was having a similar situation. She worked in a university, and she said she felt really uncomfortable with a colleague, and she always felt inferior to him. And she always felt he was hitting on her.
Yes.
And she said, I've got a meeting with him next week, and I really don't want. And he said, there is no such thing as good or bad energy. Just say yum to it. And use it for whatever you want. And she came back and she was over the moon because she said it worked. I just said, yum. That it just, I was energized to do my work rather than allowing, because we all have a choice when we're with people. And when we say people push our buttons, it's because we allow them to push our buttons.
Right. That is correct, yeah.
And we allow them, when people say, oh, they drain my energy. No, you allow that energy to drain. And it's knowing and recognizing that and saying, well, actually, this is energy. I'd like to use it to feel energized. Mm-hmm. Because for me, there's a great distinction between motivation and inspiration. Mm-hmm. Often motivation comes from us feeling that if we don't do something we don't want will happen.
Yes. But
inspiration is like, oh, this sounds a bit religious, but for me, the vision I have is breathing in like the breath of God or Allah or whatever
guru, God, image.
Yes, image you have. You're breathing that in, and that is the driving force. So this morning, I'd been wanting to finish writing a chapter in my book, and I woke at 5:00, and I needed to go to the toilet, and I thought, it's early, and then I thought, but I can feel the energy tingling in my fingers. I just need to write, and so I just came and I just wrote. I didn't fight the fact that I was awake, and it's just doing that and allowing it to flow through you. And then I had a nap later.
Yes. I think when you listen to that voice, that stirring within, that inspiration, motivation, whatever you call it, light bulb moment, when you have the germ of an idea and you want to get embarked upon, sort of putting that into action. I know inspiration for me comes when I allow myself to be still. And it's that stillness, like you say, to have that breath, be conscious of your breath, be conscious of the stillness within you. That's when inspiration occurs. That's when we're not getting, sort of kerfuffled in arguments or frustration, arguments with ourselves, I'm thinking there, because how often do we criticize ourselves and, sort of talk ourselves out of something, when really if we just went with it, there's no room for doubt when you are inspired.
Exactly.
There's no energy of doubt when you have inspiration.
When you have inspiration, you just know. And it's like sometimes people are asking me, am I planning this? Am I doing that? And I'm just, in a way, I feel I'm just ignoring them because I know everything is going to be fine. And so I'm just focusing on what I want to do in this moment. And it
exactly. Inspiration is trust.
Yes.
Inspiration is peace. Inspiration is space enabled for you to then, sort of flow through what life has for you. We all are spirit and we all have a preordained lifestyle. Yes, there are changes and traumas within that lifestyle. And hindsight is a wonderful gift. We all learn from past mistakes. We all learn from past experiences and acquaintances and encounters. But when we flow forward and just trust, Risaria, you're like me. We don't need any vision board. No. We know that the vision is already within us.
Yes.
And such a lot of fuss at this time is about people saying, oh, I'm going to make me wish, I'm going to make the magic's going to happen in 2017 and everything. Well, why are you getting stressed about it? Why don't you just trust that and get on with things and flow? Yes. Why make a big hoo-ha about it? And it's great if people need to have that support, of course, of a vision board. But your mind is your vision board.
Exactly. And
is your vision board.
And I also am aware of the limitations of my mind and imagination, and so I welcome it when the cosmos or whatever shows me something even better. Mm-hmm. It's just wonderful when we get these gifts sort of showered on us.
Mhm. If you look at a child can be fascinated just being plodging in a little puddle outside in the rain with the wellies on. They're fascinated the way the water hits the puddle, the pool, and creates a pattern, a splash, a sound.
Yes.
And I know when I was in North Yorkshire a few years ago, it was a beautiful sunny day, and I was there with one of my friends, and he just had an accident on a river in a kayak, and he was a bit of a daredevil and had gone tumbling across all of these rapids and a bit of a fall actually in the river, and he banged his head. He had a helmet on, but he banged his head and he getting some water inside of his head actually, and it had knocked all of his orientation off. And I took him out for the day, and we ended up in North Yorkshire, a beautiful place called Malyon Spout. And there's a Malyon Spout hotel, but Malyon Spout is a beautiful trickle of a waterfall. And I remember going there on this day and looking down at my friend in the river as he was stood just giving some thought and basking in the sunlight. And I looked at him and I thought, he's getting a lot of healing here. But I actually felt impressed to go and stand beneath the waterfall, and I stood and let the water fall on me and trickle down me, and I stood with my bare feet in the icy cold water, and there was like a cleansing, there was a purification that came from water.
Yes.
And of course my friend himself, even though he'd had a trauma in a river, he was drawn to go and stand on the river and bask in the sunlight. So again, coming back to water heals, not just sipping in the water, but being around water.
That's wonderful, Susan. What a beautiful image. And I really want to thank you. The time has just flown by.
It has, yes.
I just want to say welcome and thank you for bringing such wonderful, watery Christmas spirit to us.
We're raising a glass to toast ourselves with a glass of water.
Yes, we'll toast with a glass of water. Here's to a wonderful...
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy New Year.
Have a wonderful time. Thank you.
Thank you.